if you're having a bad day, this is probably not the video you want to be watching, because I'm going to tell you some stats. I'm going to tell you something the elites are doing that are just, it's morally wrong. And the problem is it's all legal. They're not doing anything illegal. But let me tell you a couple stats right off the top of my head. The richest 1% now own 1/3 of U.S. wealth. That's more. That's the highest since World War II. That's just getting your mind around it. The 1% own 1/3 of all wealth in this country. That's insane. Also, the 1% own over half of all stocks and mutual funds. So when you see on TV or you read a newspaper that's like, oh, the average person has a mutual fund, the average person owns stocks because they got a 401k and they've got retirements, you might have some, but the 1% own over half of all stocks and mutual funds. So it's a small group of people that are owning everything. Okay, and let me tell you something I've noticed, because I'm in business. I'm in the front lines of business. I've been in business for 20 years, and I'll tell you what's happening. What I've noticed, and this is very disturbing. This is the part that bothers me the most of what's going on right now. And I'll tell you right now, government's not going to help you. Government's not going to help you. Government's not going to help me. Government's not helping us. Okay, so to go forward, we got to figure this thing out. Okay, but let me tell you what the elite people, the elite companies are doing. Now, in the past, when you had people like, off the top of my head, this is going back even before my time, but like, H.L. Hunt, oil billionaires, and people, I can name off names, and neither of us would really know who they are, but I don't even want to say billionaires. Some of them were billionaires in the past. Maybe some of them were tens of millions or hundreds of millions, because now they're all billionaires, but before they weren't. But what they would do is they'd almost talk about, well, the next generation of people are going to come and they're going to do this and that, right? They'd always talk about the next generation of people coming up that's going to take my place, and they're going to build wealth this way. What the companies are doing now and the billionaires are doing now is they're creating a moat around themselves. And a moat, if we know what a moat is like if you had a castle with the water around, and then you have like the alligators or whatever, and then it's so no one can get to your castle, right? So what they're doing, and you have companies like Amazon, Walmart, Google, Facebook. I mean, all these companies, all the big companies, they are making it so no one can compete with them. So no one can get in that circle. So they can't be bumped or competed with. And that's disturbing, because in the past, it's almost like the top people encouraged it. Like they were like expected it. Like, hey, I've got my time at the top. Now the next generation is coming and they're going to take over. What's happening now is the people at the top are like, hey, I'm at the top and we're staying here. And that's disturbing. And they're not letting anyone in. I'll give you some examples. Like, for example, and I'm not going to go too in depth with this, because this is like, once you get down this rabbit hole, it's very disturbing. Like, for example, Facebook. Facebook now, because they're so big, now they want to have government regulate certain parts of social media, right? And on the surface, it's like, oh, great, finally they're giving into they're being better, but they're not. What they're doing is they're setting up so it's harder to compete against them, so it's harder to grow. And what they're doing is anyone who starts growing, they're either the first thing they're trying to do is trying to squash them. And second of all, when someone gets big, like, WhatsApp or Instagram, they're just buying them, right? And that's as old as time. But mostly they're trying to keep people so they can't even grow that big to start competing against them. You take a look at like what Amazon's doing. Amazon is something. I'll tell you something well known that they've done, and I'll tell you something most people don't know what they've done. Amazon, obviously, they with their delivery service, they use the post office. Actually, we won't do it. That's boring. Everyone knows that. Here's something no one else knows. People tend to think that, like, for example, all the do not call, list, or not the do not call, but like the spam call stuff going on. I don't know how familiar with that you are with that, but if you make so many calls from a phone, the number starts coming up as spam, and a lot of people are suggesting that it's Amazon in companies like Amazon who push this through, because the way people, average people, can still compete with Amazon and compete with Walmart and compete with some of the big players is through telephone. Because hey, if you're a small company, you call up another company, well, you develop a relationship and you keep Amazon out or you keep Walmart out. Well, all of a sudden, if you're making a phone call and your phone call can't get through because it's coming up spam, so that person's not answering, well, all of a sudden you don't have a relationship with them and they don't have a relationship with you. So that cuts off another competition from that's competing with Amazon. So now that person, the only place they know where to go is Amazon or Walmart. And all these companies are doing that. They're making it so nobody can compete with them. And what's worse is that government's on board with that. And again, that's as old as time too, because well, who's and I don't want to make this a political thing, but who's putting the politicians in power? The people with money. The people with money are Amazon and Walmart and the billionaires and Google and all these big, huge companies. They're putting the people in power. They're putting the money behind politics, so they're getting the rules made with the way they want them to be made. And what's disturbing about that? It's the fact that you look at the wealth that these people are getting. You know, Bezos had 200 billion, Musk a trillion, Warren Buffett's a couple hundred billion, Larry Ellison's like, I don't know, he was at like 200, 300, or 400 billion dollars. The Google guys are a few $100 billion. And you go, you won this generation. Like, you won the capitalist prize. You won the capitalist race, the capitalist game for this generation. You won. And instead of taking the money and saying, okay, we won, and move on. And I'm not saying they got to close up shop. Okay, I'm not saying that. But the fact is, they say we won. And now we don't want anyone else having a piece of it. We don't want anyone else having a dime. We don't want anyone competing against us. We don't want to have to compete anymore. We compete enough. Now we don't want anyone competing. So let's shut everyone off who's trying to compete. And let's shut them down before they can even start competing with us. That's insane. And you can look at it, it's immoral. But again, when it comes to business and politics, I don't think morals really plays a role. But everything they're doing is legal, and that's the scary part. It's all legal. They're not breaking, as far as I know, they're not breaking any rules by doing that. And the problem is that as a younger generation, there's less and less ways we compete. Okay, so for example, a lot of jobs are going out the door, right? So jobs are getting replaced by AI as we speak, right? And then on top of it, the jobs that are still available are paying less, and inflation is just going nuts, right? So people will say, especially older generations will say, well, you got to get in business. That's how you make real wealth, is you start your own business and blah, blah, blah. Problem is, what business do you start now? You're going to start a retail business and you're going to fight against Amazon and Walmart? Good luck with that. Good luck with that. Are there people who are going to succeed a little bit? Sure, you might make a little bit of money, might make a little bit of a living, but you're not going to build that company. You're not going to build that company. You tell me how you're going to build that company, because you say, well, I'm going to start a retail store. Okay, fine, start a retail store. Well, guess what? You're paying rent, obviously. You're paying local taxes, you're paying sales taxes, you're paying all types of taxes, right? And Amazon can come in, they build a warehouse in your community, and guess what? They're getting tax breaks. They're getting a lot of tax benefits, tax breaks, and what's the word I'm looking for? I'm not going to try to find it, but essentially like tax breaks to come into the community. So they're paying less in tax while you're paying more. And so you're a little guy with little money or no money competing against, a company that's got $1 zillion, but they're getting the breaks, the benefits, the all the incentive, or all the incentives. So how do you compete against that? How do you compete? And the answer is long term you can't. Okay, so again, let's take this scenario. You got the retail store, so you already got the deck stacked against you. So how do you get a customer? Okay, well, Walmart's got huge stores. That's fine. That's part of business. But you want to call maybe people in your community. Well, you can't call them because if you make a certain number of calls, your number comes up as spam calls. So no one's going to pick up your phone. And if anyone does pick up your call, they're going to right away have an attitude against you because they assume it's a spam call. So my alarm's going off. So you to compete against them is you can't. You've got every disadvantage. So again, what business can you start? People say, oh, you start a business. Okay, fine. You're going to do an online business. Well, guess what? Number one, if you don't get on the top of Google, you really don't have a business, right? You don't have a big online business. Here's a bigger problem with AI and with the like Alexa and the voice assistant, all these type of technologies. And this has been happening. This has been kind of like the people have been worrying about this for the last 10 years, and it's happening now, finally, unfortunately. At least in a Google search, someone's typing in and maybe 10, 15, and people say past the first page or two. If you're not on the first page, you're not, no one's clicking on your link, but minimum first page, maybe two, right? But now, if you ask one of the devices, hey, give me a close ice cream store, usually they'll give you one answer, maybe two answers. And again, if you're not that one or two, if you're not that first or second choice, you're screwed. So you either got to pay them a lot of money in advertising. You got to pay those companies. So it's like no matter what you do, you can't win. And that's the problem. That's the problem right now. In 18 to 29-year-olds in this country are less optimistic, and this is according to Pew Research. They're less optimistic about the future than any other generation, and it's sad, it's scary. So what's going to happen?